Rain hammers the windshield of Donovan's 10-year-old Honda Civic so hard the wipers can barely keep up, slapping back and forth while the city lights smear into red and amber streaks across wet asphalt. And through all that water and exhaustion, Donovan sees him, an old man standing alone at a bus stop, shoulders hunched against the downpour like he's been there for hours. Rain streaming down a face that even from 20 feet away looks like it belongs to someone who's lived through more than his share of bad nights. The clock on the dashboard reads 11:47 p.m. and Donovan has been driving for 14 hours straight, his eyes gritty with fatigue, his lower back screaming in protest against the bucket seat that has molded itself to the contours of pain. The phone mounted on his air vent buzzes with the notification of another delivery request. But it's the figure under the bus shelter that makes Donovan ease off the accelerator, his foot moving from gas to brake as something primal inside him, something his drill sergeants used to call situational awareness, tells him this old man shouldn't be out here. Donovan's bank account reads $50.23, not $50.23 of spending money, $50.23 total. Everything. The amount that sits between his son and an empty refrigerator, between paying Jamie's tutoring sessions and not paying them, between maintaining the illusion that everything's okay and admitting that they're slipping. He pulls the Civic over to the curb, hydraulic brakes hissing like something from his past life. The life where he wore body armor and carried a rifle and had a purpose written in clean military lines. The old man doesn't immediately acknowledge him. He stands there, water dripping from his silver hair, the dark overcoat he wears, expensive once, Donovan can tell, clinging to his frame like it's drowning him. There's a wooden cane in his right hand, and his knuckles are white from gripping it. When he finally turns toward the open passenger window, Donovan sees eyes that are sharp and clear despite the rain that runs down his face, and there's something in that gaze that makes Donovan think of the commanders who led his ranger team. The kind of men who have seen things, decided things, and carry the weight of those decisions like rocks in their pockets. "Sir, you need to get out of this weather," Donovan calls through the open window, rain misting in and hitting his arm. "Come on, I'll drive you somewhere." The old man approaches the car with the careful deliberation of someone who has learned not to trust his body's reflexes anymore. He settles into the passenger seat with a soft grunt, and immediately Donovan smells the rain and something else. Expensive cologne. Faint underneath the wet. The old man's breathing is shallow but steady. "Thank you," the old man says, his voice carrying an accent that Donovan can't quite place. Something European, maybe, but aged and mellowed into something almost neutral. "I was beginning to think I might catch my death out there." Donovan pulls back into traffic, the car's headlights cutting through the darkness like a blade. "Where are you headed?" "Across town, the Continental Hotel on 5th and Market." Donovan's stomach tightens. It's a 40-minute drive in this weather, and it's heading in the wrong direction, away from the neighborhood where he lives with Jamie, away from the apartment he needs to get back to, away from the last delivery requests that are probably stacking up in his app. But he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't calculate. He just nods and turns the wheel. "I'm Donovan, by the way," he says, navigating a turn. The rain is falling so hard that even with the wipers on high, the visibility is barely 30 feet ahead. "Theodore," the old man says, "Theodore Lancaster." They drive in silence for a while, and Donovan finds it's not uncomfortable, the kind of quiet that exists between people who don't need to fill every space with noise. The city unrolls around them, streets glistening like freshly opened oyster shells, neon signs reflecting in puddles, the occasional figure hunched under an awning or sprinting between buildings. It's the kind of night when the whole world feels like it's underwater. "You must be tired," Theodore says finally, not as a question but as an observation. "Always tired," Donovan replies. "Single parent, 2 jobs, the usual thing." "What's your child's name?" "Jamie. He's a good kid. Sharp as anything when he's not." Donovan stops, unsure why he's about to open up to a stranger. But something about Theodore's presence invites honesty. He stutters a bit, gets anxious about it, but the kid's got more courage than people twice his age. Theodore turns slightly in his seat, and Donovan catches the profile, the strong nose, the set of the jaw, the way his eyes seem to hold multiple thoughts at once. That must be difficult, for both of you. "It is what it is," Donovan says, which is what he tells himself every morning when he wakes up and thinks about Jamie sleeping in the next room, about the school debt, about the fact that he left a career with a pension and benefits to be here, to be present, to be the parent that Jamie needed. No regrets. That's what he tells himself. Usually, he even believes it. They drive through downtown, past the financial district where the tall buildings stand like sleeping giants, their windows dark. Theodore asks questions, not intrusive ones, but gentle, the way someone asks about something they genuinely care to understand. What does Jamie want to be? What does Donovan do besides driving? What does he miss most from before? That last question catches Donovan off guard. I don't know, he says honestly. My wife, Rachel, she used to say I missed things before I even knew they were leaving, that I was always waiting for the next thing instead of being present for this thing. He shrugs. She was a lot of things, smart, patient, way too good for me. She died when Jamie was 3. Car accident. Wasn't her fault, wasn't anyone's fault really. Just one of those things where a tire blows and timing goes wrong and your life pivots on an axis you didn't see coming. He doesn't know why he's telling the old man all this. Maybe because it's 3 in the morning, spiritually, even though the clock says 12:34. Maybe because Theodore has that quality some people have. That ability to make you feel like your story matters, like your pain isn't beneath notice. You've done well by him, Theodore says quietly. I can tell by the way you speak about him. There's pride there. And fear. The best parents have both. They pass through another neighborhood, and the buildings get older, their brick facades darkened by rain and decades of exhaust. A siren wails somewhere distant. The city breathes around them, indifferent to the old man and the tired driver and the stories they're exchanging. The Continental Hotel appears through the rain, like a ship emerging from fog, all granite and glass and the kind of architectural confidence that comes with having been important for 80 years. Donovan pulls up to the awning, and immediately a doorman in a red coat steps forward, but Theodore holds up a hand. Just a moment, the old man says. He reaches toward his pockets, and Donovan watches his weathered hands searching and not finding. Theodore's jaw tightens, and he closes his eyes for a moment like he's gathering something internal before speaking again. I seem to have a problem, Theodore says, and there's no embarrassment in his voice, which somehow makes it worse. My driver was supposed to meet me at the library. I was waiting for him, but he was delayed, and I decided to walk. My wallet, however, remains in his car across town, and I find I've spent the evening without my phone. Donovan is already reaching for the console before Theodore finishes speaking. He pulls out his wallet, a battered leather thing that's been with him for 10 years, and extracts 2 20s and a 10. $50. Everything he withdrew that morning because he doesn't trust the ATM fees to leave him anything. His hand is steady as he holds them out. Get yourself a warm meal and a dry coat, Donovan says. Something to get you through the night. Theodore looks at the money like it's glowing. I can't. You can, Donovan says, and his voice has taken on the tone it gets when he's making a decision that has weight to it. You can, and you will. Pride is a luxury, sir. Take the money. Theodore takes the bills with a hand that trembles slightly, and Donovan notices his eyes are wet, though that might be rain, but something tells him it isn't. The old man holds the money like it's sacred, like it's more than just paper and numbers. What's your full name? Theodore asks. I want to know it. I want to remember it. Donovan Shepard, he says, and Jamie Shepard is my son. Theodore repeats both names slowly, as if committing them to memory, as if they're pieces of something important. Then he's gone, opening the car door, stepping out into the rain, the doorman rushing forward with an umbrella that Theodore doesn't quite seem to notice. He walks into the hotel, the bills still clutched in his hand, and Donovan sits there for a moment, listening to the rain and the idle of the engine and the rapid-fire beating of his own heart. He drives away from the hotel, and the fuel tank is half full, which will carry him through morning deliveries, and the bank account is $0. And he hasn't thought about that yet, hasn't let the math of the decision settle into his bones. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, and if you've ever helped someone when you weren't sure you could afford to. Subscribe to Untold Hearts because this story is just getting started. He drives toward home, toward Jamie, sleeping in a room with Marvel posters on the walls and a nightmare lamp in the corner, because his son is afraid of the dark in a way that nobody at school knows about. The streets are nearly empty at this hour. Just the occasional red light, the occasional pizza delivery car, the occasional insomniac taxi making its rounds. Donovan drives through the quiet of the city and thinks about what quiet costs, about how it only happens when everyone else is asleep or working graveyard shifts, about how the world transforms into something almost peaceful between midnight and dawn if you're alone enough to see it that way. His hands grip the steering wheel, and he thinks about the old man's eyes, the way they looked when Donovan handed over the bills. The way someone's entire expression can shift when they realize someone is going to help them, that the universe has produced in this particular moment a human being who will choose their welfare over their own equilibrium. He thinks about Afghanistan, about a family outside Kandahar whose baby had dysentery, whose oldest son was maybe 7, who came to the gate of the firebase at 4 a.m. because he'd heard Americans sometimes had food. Donovan remembers his commander saying no, remembers the protocol against fraternization, remembers breaking protocol anyway and handing over 3 days of his rations to that boy. Crackers and powdered coffee and energy bars that tasted like plastic, but would keep that child alive for another week. He remembers being written up for it. He remembers not caring. Same thing tonight, different country, same gut feeling. The apartment is silent when he enters. The living room smells like the pasta Jamie microwaved for dinner, and there are some sketches on the coffee table, drawings Jamie made instead of speaking when his stutter was bad. A fighter jet, improbably detailed, a lighthouse in a storm, a man and a boy standing on a beach holding hands. Donovan goes to the kitchen and opens the refrigerator. Stands there, staring at what's left. Tomorrow morning, there's no grocery run because the grocery run requires money he no longer has. There's milk, bread, eggs, some butter, the remnants of a rotisserie chicken from 2 days ago, enough to stretch another 3 or 4 days if he's careful. He closes the door and thinks about calling his mother, thinks about asking for help, and he knows he won't because pride is also an equation, because some things cost more than $50. His phone sits on the counter and he checks the app. No pending deliveries. The system shows $0 available, which is accurate, which is somehow almost funny. He scrolls through his ride history. Mrs. Patterson, the woman with arthritis who always tips too much and talks about her grandchildren she never gets to see. The college kid who's always working on music and plays it through the speakers and asks Donovan what he thinks. The businesswoman who used to cry on the phone during her rides, who stopped crying after a few weeks, who now takes the train instead. The app is dead at this hour. The city is resting. He's given away his margin, and he's here, in this kitchen, with his sleeping son in the other room. And it occurs to him that this is what faith feels like when you can't afford faith anymore. It feels like standing in the dark and believing the floor is there, even though you can't see it. Donovan goes to bed and doesn't sleep, just lies in the dark and thinks about the cost of kindness, about how it always seems to cost you the thing you have least of, and about how there's no mathematics in the universe that would explain why that feels like the right equation anyway. At 2:17 a.m., Jamie comes to his door. The boy is in his Spider-Man pajamas, and his eyes are wide with the particular terror that comes from a nightmare that felt real, and Donovan immediately throws back the covers. "Come here," Donovan says, and Jamie climbs into the bed like he's small again, curling into the space against his father's chest. Donovan wraps his arms around him and feels his son's heart rate slowly begin to steady, feels the terror in those small shoulders gradually dissolve into the mere residue of fear. "Bad dream?" Donovan asks, and Jamie nods against his shirt. "You left," Jamie says. His stutter is worse in the vulnerability of the middle of the night. "The dream? You were gone and you weren't coming back." Donovan tightens his arms. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" There's a small handprint of tears on Donovan's shirt now, and it's one of the things about being a parent that nobody prepares you for. The way your child's fear becomes a physical thing you have to absorb, have to contain, have to prove you're strong enough to hold. "I promise," Donovan says. "Even if I had to go somewhere, I would always come back. Do you understand? There's nothing in the world that could keep me from coming back to you." Jamie doesn't respond, just buries his face in his father's chest, and Donovan does what he always does when the nightmares come. He makes up a story. Tonight, it's about a lighthouse keeper, A guy who lived on a rocky shore by himself, whose only job was keeping the light on so ships could find their way home. He was alone a lot, Donovan says, half whispering, but he wasn't lonely, because he knew that somewhere out there on the water, somebody needed his light, even if he couldn't see them. He pauses, adjusting the pillow under Jamie's head. And on the really bad nights when the storm was so thick he couldn't see anything, he still kept the light going. Because that's the deal, right? You keep showing up, you keep the light on, even when you're not sure anyone's watching. Jamie's breathing slows. His fingers, which had been gripping Donovan's shirt, slowly relax. The lighthouse K-keeper ever get scared? Jamie whispers. All the time, Donovan says, but he kept the light burning anyway. Because that's what you do for people you love. You burn your light no matter what. By 2:47 a.m., Jamie is asleep, and Donovan lies there holding his son, feeling the complete weight of another human being depending on him to be the kind of person who doesn't break his promises, who shows up, who keeps the light burning. He lies there in the dark and thinks about what it means to be someone's entire world, to have that responsibility settled across your shoulders like a coat you never take off, like a choice you made the moment you held a newborn and looked into a face that was half yours and half someone you loved. The knock comes at 7:47 in the morning, loud and official, the kind of knock that makes Donovan's heart spasm with the ancient fear of authority, with the muscle memory of bad news. He opens the door unshowered, wearing the t-shirt and sweatpants he slept in, and finds a man in an immaculate suit standing there with an envelope in his hand and an expression of professional neutrality. "Mr. Donovan Shepard," the man says, and he doesn't sound unfriendly, just formal. "Yeah, that's me. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Conrad Lancaster. He'd like to meet with you this afternoon. I can wait while you're getting ready, or I can return in an hour." Donovan opens his mouth to ask questions, but nothing comes out. His brain is too busy processing the name Lancaster, which is definitely not the name of anyone he knows, anyone who should know him, anyone who would send a man in a suit to his apartment in a neighborhood where Mercedes don't exactly appear regularly. "There's a car outside," the suit man continues, gesturing down the hallway. "A Rolls Royce, if you'd like to look." Donovan does. He follows this stranger down the stairs and out to the street, and there, parked in front of his apartment building like an alien spacecraft, is a black Rolls-Royce Phantom, the kind of car that costs more than several houses in this neighborhood, that has more leather in its interior than most furniture stores sell in a month. There's a driver at the wheel, and when he sees Donovan, he nods with the kind of respect you reserve for people who matter. "What is this?" Donovan says, not to anyone in particular, just into the morning air and the gathering crowd of neighbors who are definitely watching. "Mr. Lancaster will explain everything," the suit man says. "He's asked for 2 p.m. Will that work?" This is when Donovan should close the door. This is when normal people call the police, or at least demand more information. But Donovan has spent 20 years learning to follow instinct, to trust the part of his brain that processes information too fast for words to catch up with. And right now, his instinct is saying, this is connected to the old man from last night, is saying, this might be the moment where something changes. "Yeah," he says, 2 p.m. works. Jamie wakes up while he's in the shower, and when Donovan comes out to the living room, his son is standing there in his Spider-Man pajamas, holding one of his drawings, looking like he's processing something. Did someone important come to see us?" Jamie asks, and his stutter is worse when he's uncertain, when his anxiety is high. "Not us, buddy," Donovan says, ruffling his son's bed head. "Just me, and I don't know what it is yet. It's a surprise." "But bad surprise?" "Doesn't feel like it," Donovan says, which is the truth as far as his gut can measure it. "They have breakfast. Cereal, because that's what they have." Jamie complains about having cereal again, and Donovan almost snaps at him but catches himself. The kid doesn't know about the $50, doesn't know the fridge is running on borrowed time. So Donovan just says, "I know, buddy," and pours himself a cup of coffee that's mostly water, because they're low on grounds. Jamie talks about school, about a test he's studying for, about a kid named Kyle who sometimes makes fun of his stutter, but also sometimes sits with him at lunch, which Jamie has determined means they might actually be friends. After breakfast, Donovan checks his phone for delivery requests. There are 4. He drops Jamie at school and drives the morning shift. The first two deliveries go fine. The third is to the Golden Lotus restaurant, a place Donovan has been running orders to for 3 years. When he pulls up, the owner, Mrs. Nguyen, waves him in the way she always does, then disappears behind the counter and comes back with an extra bag. "Pff, for your boy," she says, "fortune cookies. I always have extras." Donovan takes the bag, thanks her, and drives the rest of his shift thinking about how the city is full of people like Mrs. Nguyen. People who notice, people who tuck kindness into small gestures without making a production of it. After school, Jamie climbs into the passenger seat, and Donovan hands him the bag. His son opens it, pulls out a fortune cookie, cracks it, and reads the slip of paper. "Patience opens doors that force cannot," Jamie reads aloud, and then he laughs. Actually laughs, the kind of laugh that doesn't happen often enough. "That seems appropriate," Donovan says. "It's like the universe is giving me advice," Jamie says. "Like I'm not the only one who thinks I need to chill out sometimes." They both laugh. It's a small moment, but it's real. And Donovan holds onto it the way he holds onto all the small moments with his son, carefully, knowing they're the only currency that actually matters. At 1:45 p.m., Donovan puts on the nicest clothes he owns. Dark jeans without holes, a button-up shirt that's only slightly wrinkled, the faded brown leather jacket that he's had since his military days, the one that smells like oil and memory and coffee. He's not going to pretend to be something he's not. If this Lancaster person wanted to meet a man in a suit, he would have specified that. The Rolls-Royce ride is silent, except for the soft hum of the engine and the sound of rain on the windows. It's still raining, like yesterday's storm decided to stay, like the sky has given up on ever being clear again. They drive through the city, ascending through neighborhoods that get progressively more expensive, where the buildings get taller and the cars get nicer, and Donovan feels like an alien who's landed on a planet that speaks the same language but follows completely different rules. The building is glass and steel and rises into the rain clouds like it's challenging them. They pull into an underground garage, and the driver escorts Donovan to an elevator that ascends without sound, without stopping at intermediate floors, ascending in a way that makes Donovan's ears pop. The doors open onto a penthouse office, all floor-to-ceiling windows, and a desk that looks like it was designed by someone who thinks poverty is a choice. Behind that desk sits a man Donovan's age, maybe younger, with dark hair slicked back, wearing a suit that probably costs more than Donovan's first car, with the kind of posture that comes from knowing the world is yours to navigate. He stands when Donovan enters and extends his hand, and his grip is firm but not aggressive. "Mr. Shepard," the man says, "I'm Conrad Lancaster. Thank you for coming." Donovan shakes his hand, and his calloused palm engulfs the other man's smooth one. "I'm not sure why I'm here, but okay." Conrad gestures to a chair. "Please, sit. Can I offer you something? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," Donovan says, sitting. Up here, above the clouds, the rain is barely visible, just a suggestion of weather happening somewhere far below. "I'm going to need you to explain why you have a Rolls-Royce parked at my apartment." Conrad sits back in his chair, and he steeples his fingers the way people do when they're buying time to think about how to say something difficult. "My father came to see me last night, soaking wet, bearing a $50 bill from a stranger, more alive than I've seen him in months. He told me about you." The name registers. "Lancaster? Theodore Lancaster." "The old man from the bus stop," Donovan says, not a question. "My father," Conrad confirms. "Theodore Lancaster Sr. He has a peculiar hobby, Mr. Shepard. He goes out into the city, different neighborhoods, different times of day, and he puts himself into situations where he needs help. No wallet, no phone, no resources. A kind of field test." "A field test of what?" "Human character," Conrad says simply. "For the last year, I've been developing a foundation, the Lancaster Foundation for Community Development. It's designed to help rebuild neighborhoods, fund small businesses, create mentorship programs. I wanted someone to run it who couldn't be bought by the money involved, someone who would be in it for the right reasons. So I asked my father to help me find that person." Donovan's brain is processing this, but there's a lag between input and understanding. "He tested over 200 people," Conrad continues. "Street encounters, each one genuine need, each one an opportunity to help. Do you know how many of those 200 people helped him?" Donovan waits. 43, Conrad says. And of those 43, 38 asked for something in return, or helped in a way that was clearly performative, like they were helping for the story, for the recognition. 5 actually helped without expectation. And of those 5, Conrad leans forward. You're the only one who gave him everything you had. I had $50, Donovan says. It was all I had until next Friday. It's not like I was giving him my inheritance. Exactly, Conrad says. You gave him everything, not most of what you had, not what you could afford to lose, everything. My father said that when he asked for your name, you said it like it was an oath, like you were giving him something that mattered. Donovan feels something shifting in his chest, some wall that he spent years building against the idea that his sacrifices matter, that the small choices he makes in darkness have weight. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment to share it and subscribe to Untold Hearts, because there are people out there right now making impossible choices between their own survival and helping a stranger, and they deserve to know that someone sees them. I have a proposal for you, Conrad says. I want you to run the Lancaster Foundation for Community Development. The position comes with a salary of $300,000 a year, stock options, health insurance that covers every type of specialist your son might ever need, and a mandate to use the foundation's resources exactly as you see fit. The only requirement is that you lead with character first, profit second. Donovan stands up. He needs to move, needs to find the edges of the room because his skin suddenly feels too tight. No, he says. I'm sorry? No, Donovan repeats, turning to face Conrad directly. I appreciate it, I do, but I didn't give that money to your father because I wanted something in return. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And now you're offering me everything, and it feels like karma, but it also feels like I'm being rewarded for doing something that shouldn't need a reward. Conrad doesn't stand. He just watches Donovan with an expression that might be respect, or might be calculation. You're right, he says finally. The reward does feel transactional. So let me reframe it. My father tested 200 people because I wanted to find someone whose judgment I could trust with a foundation that will affect hundreds of thousands of lives. I didn't want someone looking to get rich or become famous or check a box on their redemption arc. I wanted someone who gives everything away because that's who they are, not because they think it will come back around. I'm a rideshare driver, Donovan says. I didn't finish my degree. I left the Army to be a single parent because my wife died, and I couldn't be in 2 places at once. I'm not qualified to run a foundation. My father's one of the smartest people I know, Conrad says, smarter than me, if I'm being honest. And he spent a year looking for someone qualified. But he wasn't looking for someone with perfect credentials. He was looking for someone with good instincts and a genuine heart. You have both. Donovan sits back down. I need to think about it. Of course, Conrad says. I'll have my team send you information about the foundation, about what we do, about the structure of the position. Take a week, take 2 weeks. But know that your answer will likely determine how this foundation develops, what it prioritizes, who it ultimately helps. So think carefully. They talk for another hour. Conrad explains the foundation's mission, helping small businesses in underserved neighborhoods, creating mentorship programs for kids aging out of the foster system, funding community centers in areas that can't get city support. The work is meaningful, and it's enormous, and Donovan can feel the weight of it pressing down like an actual thing. Outside, the rain has finally quit. Conrad stands and walks to the window, and Donovan follows without being asked. From up here, the city spreads out below them like a circuit board made of light and shadow. The rain is cleared and the sun is beginning to set, turning everything gold and amber and deep purple at the edges. See that neighborhood? Conrad points to a particular area where the buildings are older, the streets a little narrower, the parks a little more worn. That's where you live. That's where the first community center is going to go. Donovan recognizes it immediately. The streets he drives, the corner store where he buys Jamie's school supplies, the park where his son plays soccer sometimes when the weather cooperates. Can I be honest with you? Conrad says, and his voice has changed. The boardroom polish is gone. My wife left me 12 years ago, she said. He stops, starts again. She said I was impossible to love, that I'd forgotten what winning was even for. He's quiet for a second. My daughter's 23. She calls once a month. We talk for about 6 minutes and it feels like filling out a form. He turns to face Donovan. You chose your kid over everything. Your career, your comfort, your money. I didn't do that. I chose the company, and I woke up one morning in a penthouse with nobody in it. He clears his throat. So no, I'm not offering you this job because you're qualified on paper. I'm offering it because you got the important stuff right, and I need someone like that running something that matters. He extends his hand again. Will you help me build something that matters? Donovan shakes his hand, and this time, the grip feels different. It feels like a promise between two men who understand, in different ways and from different angles, that the point of being alive is to become someone who makes other people's lives larger. When Donovan leaves the building, the sun has broken through the clouds, and the city is glistening like it's been baptized. The driver takes him back to his neighborhood, and Donovan exits the Rolls-Royce like he's waking up from a dream, trying to figure out if any of it was real. He picks Jamie up from school at 3 p.m., and his son immediately notices something is different. Did something happen? Jamie asks, buckling into the car's passenger seat. Maybe, Donovan says. I met with someone today, about a job, a really good job. Do you want it? That's the thing about Jamie. He cuts through to the heart of things without meaning to, the way kids do. I don't know, Donovan says honestly. It feels like something I should want, but it also feels like something that would change us. And I'm not sure change is what we need right now. They drive home in silence, and Jamie draws in his sketchbook while Donovan thinks about the offer, about the foundation, about the opportunity to do something that matters on a larger scale than just getting his son through school with a whole heart. 2 days later, Donovan is sitting in a small coffee shop when he gets a text from a number he doesn't recognize. It's Theodore Lancaster. The text says, "Coffee?" They meet at a place that doesn't have a chain logo, a small coffee shop that smells like fresh bread and espresso, and Theodore is there waiting, looking less rain-soaked and more distinguished than he did 2 nights ago. He has the wooden cane with him, and there's a warmth in his eyes when he sees Donovan. I wanted to apologize, Theodore says, settling into a chair across from Donovan. I wasn't entirely honest with you the other night, though I also wasn't dishonest. I was testing you. It's something I do. It's something my son asked me to do. But that doesn't diminish what happened. The rain was real. I did need help. And your kindness was real. I figured as much, Donovan says, after I had time to think about it. The timing was too convenient, but I want you to know it doesn't matter. I would have done the same thing either way. I know, Theodore says. That's why you got the call from my son. They sit in companionable silence for a moment, and Theodore orders an espresso and Donovan orders coffee, and the simple act of sitting here, in this place, without the weight of the decision hanging between them, feels restorative. Tell me something, Theodore says. What are you afraid of? Donovan thinks about this. Failing Jamie, not being enough, him finding out how much I sacrificed and resenting me for it. And if you take the position with the foundation? Same fears, but on a bigger stage, Donovan says. I'd have more resources to help him, but less time. I'd have credibility, but I'd be playing a role. I've spent a lot of years trying not to play roles, trying to just be his dad. Theodore nods, and something in his expression suggests he understands this in a way that goes deeper than just listening to words. My father was a general, he says quietly. World War II. Brilliant tactician, ruthless when he needed to be, loved by his men. But he was a general first, and a father second, and I spent most of my childhood resenting him for that. Then I became like him. Built an empire, became obsessed with control and success. Looked up one day and realized my son barely knew me. Theodore stirs his espresso slowly. He had to put together a year-long project to help me see human beings clearly again, because I was so lost in abstraction that I forgot people were real. Are you saying I should take the job? Donovan asks. I'm saying there's no answer that's right for everyone, Theodore says, but there might be an answer that's right for you and Jamie, and only you know what that is. When Donovan gets home, Jamie is waiting on the front steps of the apartment with his backpack, and his face is anxious in the way it gets when he's been thinking too hard about something. I need to talk to you, Jamie says, about the J job. Okay, Donovan says, sitting beside him on the step. Talk. Don't want it because you think it will take you away from me, Jamie says, and his stutter is bad, which means he's been thinking about this for a while, which means it matters to him. But what if you took it because you wanted to help people? What if you just took it for them? Is that what you want? Donovan asks carefully. I want you to be happy, Jamie says. And I don't think you're happy driving people around all day. You're good at it, but you're not happy. You're just surviving. And I'm old enough to know that's not enough. Donovan thinks about this small, brave boy who is still stuttering but pushing the words out anyway, because they matter to him, because he wants his father to have more than survival, and something in his chest expands in a way that makes it hard to breathe. When did you get so wise? Donovan asks. I've always been, wise, Jamie says, with the kind of certainty that only a kid can manage. You're just now noticing. Later that evening, after Jamie has gone to bed, Donovan sits on the fire escape of the apartment building and calls Royce. His old army buddy picks up on the third ring. It's late, but Royce has always been someone who answers, who doesn't let calls go to voicemail. Shepard, Royce says, and there's immediately a smile in his voice. You're calling to tell me you've finally gotten rich. I'm calling because I'm losing my mind, Donovan says, and I need to talk to someone who understands the shape of it. Royce listens while Donovan tells him about Theodore, about the test, about the foundation offer. Royce doesn't interrupt. He just listens the way Rangers listen, completely, without the need to fill silence or offer quick solutions. When Donovan finishes, Royce is quiet for a moment. You remember Kandahar? Royce says finally. When you broke protocol and gave your rations to that family? Yeah. Do you remember what I said about it? Donovan thinks. You said I was going to get myself in trouble. Before that, Royce says, I said, that's what we signed up for, brother. To protect people, to serve people, to put their survival above our comfort. You remember that? I remember. You didn't leave the Rangers, Royce says quietly. You just changed your mission. You switched from protecting people with body armor and a rifle to protecting them with time and presence and your last $50. But the mission is the same. The principle is the same. You're still serving. Donovan feels something in his chest loosen. Not entirely, but enough. So you think I should take the job? Donovan asks. I think, Royce says, that you were never going to turn it down. I think you were just checking if the old you, the one who followed orders and kept his head down, would recognize the new you. And I'm telling you, brother, the new you is the same guy I served with, just wearing a different uniform. They talk for another 20 minutes, about Jamie, about the years that have passed, about the ways people change and stay the same simultaneously. When they hang up, Donovan sits on the fire escape and watches the city and thinks about missions and how they can look different from the outside but feel exactly the same from the inside. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to hear it. Now, back to the story. 2 weeks later, Donovan takes the position. The transition is gradual. He gives notice to the rideshare company, spends the last few weeks transferring people and thanking them for being decent humans in the context of his driving. Some of them cry. Some of them tell him he's going to be missed. Some of them ask if he's moving away, because that's the only reason people leave the kind of job that's become their identity. He's not moving away. He's moving up, but upward isn't the same as away. The foundation offices are downtown, in a building that's not fancy but functional, with big windows that look out on the neighborhoods they're designed to serve. There's a team of 12 people already in place, economists and social workers and program directors, and they're all waiting to meet their new executive director. Donovan's first day, he wears his faded brown leather jacket over a button-up shirt, and he doesn't apologize for it. He walks into the office and he says, I want to know what you think is broken and what you think we can fix. I want to know about the failures you've seen and the successes you've built. And I want to know why you care about this work, because I'm not going to work with anyone who doesn't have a reason that goes deeper than a paycheck. They spend the day talking, real talking, the kind where people don't hide behind professional language but actually say what they mean. By the end of it, Donovan understands that he's been given a team that was already trying to do good work, and his job is not to fix them, but to help them be brave enough to imagine bigger. In the foundation's first weeks, one of the first families they reach out to is Mrs. Delgado and her son, who has autism and has been trying for 2 years to get into a school program that would give him the support he needs. The local schools say there's a waiting list. The waiting list is 2 years long. Mrs. Delgado works 2 jobs and can't afford private programs, and she's been trapped in the space between her son's needs and the system's glacial pace. Donovan takes this one personally. He drives across town at night, just like the first night, just like the night that started everything. But this time he's not in the old Civic driving a paying fare. He's driving with a folder of information about the boy, about the programs the foundation has access to, about the schools that might take him if someone from an organization like the Lancaster Foundation makes the case. He sits across from the school board director in an office that's not fancy but is official, and he talks about the boy the way he talked about Jamie to Theodore. With pride, with specificity, with the kind of detail that makes a person stop being a statistic and start being human. The director listens. More importantly, the director actually hears him. A week later, the boy gets placed in a program that has room for him. The foundation funds the transportation. Mrs. Delgado cries in Donovan's office and says that nobody has ever helped her before. And Donovan, who once gave his last $50 to a stranger in the rain, understands that this is what that moment was preparing him for. Not the Rolls-Royce or the penthouse office, but the ability to sit across from a desperate mother and say, "Yes, we will help you. Your son matters. You matter." He drives back to his neighborhood later that night with the window down, and he thinks about how the equation hasn't changed, not really. He's still driving at night, still trying to help people, still pushing against systems that say no. But now he has resources. Now he has legitimacy. Now when he says a kid deserves a chance, people listen. The mission is exactly the same. The uniform is just better tailored. The foundation's first major initiative is something Donovan designs himself, a mentorship program specifically for kids with speech difficulties and anxiety, paired with adults who have overcome similar challenges. It's personal, and maybe that's not professional, but Donovan has learned that professional is just another word for afraid to care too much. Jamie meets Theodore Lancaster Sr. at a foundation event, a ribbon cutting for a new community center in a neighborhood that had been written off by every institution that matters. Theodore is there with Conrad, and when he sees Jamie, something in his expression softens in a way that suggests he's been looking forward to this meeting. "You must be Jamie," Theodore says, extending his hand. Jamie shakes it, and he's nervous and his stutter is present, but he doesn't hide from it. Yes, sir, my dad told me about your T-test." "Did he?" Theodore asks, amused. "And what did you think of that?" "I thought it was so smart," Jamie says, "like a TR test in school, but for checked character instead of math." Theodore is delighted by this answer in a way that's visible on his face. "Would you like to get ice cream with me? I think we have a lot to discuss about the nature of character." Donovan watches his son walk off with the old man, and there's a moment where he wants to follow, wants to make sure it's okay, and then he lets it go. Letting go is maybe the most important skill he's learned as a parent. Conrad approaches while Donovan is watching them disappear into a crowd. "He seems like a good kid," Conrad says. "He is," Donovan says. "He's the kind of kid that makes you believe the world is going to be okay, even when everything in your experience says it probably won't be." "That's a gift," Conrad says, "that kind of hope. Most people lose it by the time they're adults." The foundation thrives. Within 18 months, it's grown from 1 program to 7. It's placed 32 mentors with kids who were struggling, helped 20 businesses get loans that nobody else would give them, created a community scholarship that has sent 8 kids to college who would have aged out of the foster system without support. Donovan still drives sometimes. On Fridays, when the foundation work is done, he gets in his old Civic and he takes people places. Not for money. The foundation pays him enough that he doesn't need to, but because he misses it, the conversation, the small moments of connection that happen when someone gets in a car and tells you their story. One Friday, about 18 months into his tenure at the foundation, Donovan picks up an elderly woman who's heading to the hospital. She has cancer, she tells him, and it's probably final. And she's not sad about that because she's had a good life, but she's sad that nobody will remember her stories. Donovan talks with her for the whole drive, and he records it, with her permission, and later he plays it for the Foundation's communications team, and they turn it into a short documentary, and it goes viral because people are hungry for stories about lives well lived, about aging gracefully, about mortality not being a failure. It becomes a series. Stories from the city, from people who might otherwise disappear into anonymity. The Foundation funds it, and Donovan directs it, and suddenly the Foundation isn't just about giving people money. It's about giving people witness, about saying your life matters, and we want to record that before you're gone. Jamie becomes the series producer when he's old enough, which means he's involved in the Foundation by the time he's a teenager, which means he grows up understanding that goodness is a choice and an action and something you do every single day. If Untold Hearts has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below, and hit that like button if you haven't already. Now, back to the story. The moment that will stay with Donovan forever comes 6 years after that night in the rain. He's in a meeting with Conrad and Theodore, discussing the Foundation's expansion into a new neighborhood, when Jamie arrives with some materials he's prepared for the presentation. He's in college now, studying social work, still with traces of his stutter but no longer afraid of it, more comfortable with the broken rhythm of his speech than with the forced fluidity he sometimes achieves when he's trying. Conrad's assistant, a sharp-dressed woman named Vivian, glances at Jamie setting up his materials and turns to Conrad with raised eyebrows. "I understand you're looking for a new community liaison. Are we really considering hiring from within the family? A rideshare driver's son running outreach for the entire Northeast Division?" The room goes quiet. Donovan feels his jaw tighten, feels the old protective instinct rise up, but before he can say a word, Jamie sets down his materials and turns to face Vivian directly. "My dad can do anything," Jamie says, and there is no stutter, not a trace. His voice is clear and steady, and it surprises everyone in the room, including himself. "He gave his last $50 to a stranger in the rain. He left a military career to raise me. He built this." Jamie gestures around the room, from nothing, from a handshake. He pauses, and for a second it looks like the stutter might come back, but it doesn't. "I'm not here because of his name. I'm here because he showed me what it looks like to actually care about people, not in a speech, every day." The silence in the room is absolute. Theodore is looking at Jamie with tears running openly down his face. Conrad has his hand over his mouth. Viviana's expression has shifted from skepticism to something that might be shame. Donovan stands there, looking at his son. This boy who spent years fighting to get words out, who drew pictures when his voice wouldn't cooperate, who kept a nightmare lamp on because he was afraid of the dark. And he understands that the greatest thing he ever did wasn't giving $50 to a stranger. It was raising a human being who could stand up in a room full of powerful people and speak without fear. "I'm sorry," Vivian says quietly. "I spoke out of turn." "It's okay," Jamie says, and there's no malice in it. "You didn't know. Now you do." Theodore reaches for Jamie's hand and holds it, and the old man's grip is firm, and in that gesture there's a lineage of character passing between generations. Theodore to Donovan, Donovan to Jamie, and now Jamie standing on his own. The years unfold. The Foundation becomes a model for other cities, and Donovan is asked to consult, to speak, to help replicate the work. But he never loses the leather jacket. Never forgets what it felt like to have $50 and give it away. Never stops driving on Fridays, collecting stories, remembering that the whole point of being alive is connection. Jamie finishes college and joins the Foundation full-time, and together, he and his father build something that becomes part of the identity of the city. Not in the flashy way that rich people usually affect things, but in the quiet way that works. By being present, by listening, by making people feel seen. Theodore Lancaster Sr. lives another 8 years, and Jamie becomes his best friend in a way that defies the generation gap, that transcends the initial test and becomes something real and deep and full of inside jokes and late-night conversations. When Theodore dies, Jamie speaks at his funeral, and Donovan watches his son stand up in front of hundreds of people and talk about what it means to be recognized, to be seen, to be told that your existence matters. Jamie doesn't stutter once, and Donovan realizes that his son has learned something that can't be taught in any conventional way, that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to speak anyway. Conrad becomes close with them too, in a way that none of them quite expected. He learns from Donovan how to be less calculating and more present, how to value people for what they contribute to the world beyond what they can provide for you. It's a redemption arc that nobody planned, that emerged organically from proximity and genuine relationship. Years later, when Donovan is asked in interviews what changed his life, he never talks about the Rolls-Royce or the foundation or the money. He talks about the choice to pull over on a rainy night, to stop his car, to see another human being, and decide that their need mattered more than his comfort, more than his fear, more than his poverty. He talks about Jamie, who taught him that sacrifice only feels heavy if you're not sure it means something. He talks about Theodore Sr., who understood that character is both real and worth testing for. He talks about Conrad, who learned that the best business investment is in human beings. And he talks about the night itself, the rain, the bus stop, the moment when he looked at his bank account and decided that $50 was enough to give away because someone else's welfare outweighed his own anxiety. It's a choice anyone can make. It's not a special choice. It doesn't require millions of dollars or a dramatic life change. It just requires the willingness to be less comfortable, to acknowledge that other people's pain is real and worthy of attention, to believe that kindness is its own kind of currency. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that good people still exist and that kindness always finds its way back, please share it. Subscribe to Untold Hearts for more stories proving that the most powerful people aren't always the ones in suits. Tell us in the comments, have you ever helped a stranger and had something unexpected happen?